Jennifer, I guess the big story today, certainly federally, is this whole situation with expelling the 6 Indian diplomats and India's tit for tat, of course. And it's funny, James Meny was mentioning earlier on, what we are seeing now, and this, I don't know if this might have been part of the Liberal strategy here, is pushback against the federal Conservatives on this whole story about them basically pandering, I guess, to the Indian community. What do you make of this?
Well, yes, in a sense, it's interesting because, we can't look at anything without what else is going on at the same time. So today, the Justin Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, and the Deputy Chief of Staff, and Dominic LeBlanc were testifying at the Foreign Interference Committee, and she was hammering on the fact that it's incumbent upon all leaders to get that security clearance so they can know. Now, Pierre Poilievre has not done that so far because he insists upon his right to be able to speak out and have free speech about this. But, this is very important because right now we have to look at, the countries that are being looked at for foreign interference. India is one of them. The other one is China. Now, currently what's happening is an election. There are 2 elections going on, but one is very important for our purposes here is the one in British Columbia, where there is a very, very large Sikh and generally Indian population, as well as a very large Chinese population. So they had advanced polls between the 10th and the 13th, and then today advanced polls, and then tomorrow. So this could be part of a strategy to try to hurt the Conservatives and maintain a David Eby government. Notice I'm not saying to help the BC Liberals because it's a bit like in Quebec, only even weirder if you can believe it. But yes, and it was interesting. I listened to a little bit of the interview that Mr. Poilievre gave this morning, and he was calmer than usual, but there were a lot of accusations about pandering in Quebec by Trudeau, and I can see it. I mean, he basically was saying that, they've never done that. Well, we will recall the Minister of Curry in a Hurry, Jason Kenney, and there was a lot of pandering going on in the Harper Khan government, which Mr. Poilievre was a member of.
Okay, so, I mean, where does it go from here? I was saying earlier on, some people brought up the fact that when the same situation came up in the U.S., it got handled without blowing up because the U.S. went to India, said, look, here's what we have. Similar situations, right? Yet when India is confronted by Canada, the idea was like, well, they're just like a fly on our nose, shoo them away and nothing's going to happen. So where does this go?
Well, it's hard to see. It's a little bit of tit for tat, and we see that the trade minister is trying to reassure business owners that this won't have a great impact on trade. But I mean, let's get realistic here. The U.S. is a major power, and we used to be, and many years ago, looked at in foreign affairs as a middle power. Now, despite the fact that India is a Commonwealth ally, we're really not that important to them, and I don't think that the current Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, and our Prime Minister have had good relations going back. And I mean, this situation of the accusations of the involvement, which has resulted in the evidence that India said it hasn't seen. It doesn't say it hasn't existed, but we had the RCMP denied a visa this week to be able to go to India. This went back a year. So, this has kind of been bubbling over and simmering over. Now, it's interesting because something similar is happening today in the U.S. regarding the murder of a Sikh activist in the U.S. And so we'll see what happens with that, but I'm sure it'll be like night and day in terms of the response.
Yeah, I would point out, by the way, this is India is a country of, 1.5 billion people. Yes, we have trade with them. It would seem to me that Canada, I hate to put it this way, has to tread, I don't want to say lightly, but to some degree, yeah, they have to. We can't afford to just go ahead and say, we're having nothing to do with you. That wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work.
So you kind of wonder then. My understanding is, Jennifer, that we presented this information to India, to the government, and they just said, we're not interested.
Well, exactly. And this was what I was alluding to earlier about the denied visas for the Deputy Commissioner. The Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP presented some information in Singapore, apparently, over the weekend to Indian officials, and then was subsequently denied a visa to go and present them in India. So, it's going to be a little bit of this and that. And of course, in all diplomacy, there are all kinds of things, such as what we saw withdrawing diplomats. Now, we're talking about high commissioners. We're talking about the diplomats at the highest level. So these are very serious allegations. And I'm sure that the RCMP would not have gone to these, have stood up with, the minister and the prime minister to say, hey, like, there's something going on here.
By the way, I just want to ask one more last question on this. So here we are. You mentioned about Pierre Poilievre at this foreign interference hearing. not wanting to get security. How do you square that circle? If you're him, you can criticize as much as you want, but if you want to know the information, you're opting not to.
Well, it's kind of hard to square the circle because I think he wants to be able to say whatever he wants, and having classified information doesn't really square with that circle.
Kind of wonder where this is going to go. All right, let me move on from that and talk about the other story today here. Most Quebecers say healthcare has worsened since the CAQ came into power. We're talking about it in the last 5 years. That number, by the way, and I asked this question of our listeners earlier on, is up over 56%. That's a pretty big number. What do you make of this?
Well, it is, and 56 worsened, 32% unchanged. Now, 5 years ago, people weren't having such a great impression about the healthcare anyway, so this could well be over 80%. Now, interestingly, the poll was taken between the 27th and the 29th of September by Léger, and we'll have to note that 5% said there was an improvement. We don't know who these people are, where they live, but I wonder if after last week's announcement of taking, basically removing healthy patients off the patient list for general practitioners, family doctors in Quebec, and giving them away, kind of like this strange Robin Hood thing with healthcare. I wonder what the numbers would be if Léger was polling this week.
Yeah, good point. Now they're saying they're just considering that, right? They've been talking about it for a couple of months now. There's been no decision.
No, there's been no decision. It's one of the recommendations that's been used about. But I mean, if you look at it in the context of everything, and as much as Christian Dubé is a very likable minister, and I think that has really calmed things down because he is a very good administrator. People tend to like him, even if they don't particularly like the government. They trust him, and they think that he's got the best intentions at heart, I believe, generally. But he's working. It's like pushing water up a hill. When you look at the past years, the difficulties with the unions, the difficulties getting the PABs, the orderlies during the pandemic, it's just been nothing but bad news. But I guess we'll continue to see. The minister did respond to something in the Journal about this today, and he said, his main interest is access to health care for Quebecers. And I don't see how musing publicly about removing healthy patients from GPs' patient roles is going to accomplish that.
By the way, it would have been great, hadn't it, if what you said, accidental slip of the tongue, had been the case, that the health minister is interested in health care for Anglos. That would have been great.
You know what? I don't think he's not, honestly. But you see, that's my little Freudian stuff. I'm an Anglo-Quebecer first, always.
All right, let me get to this one last topic before we run out of time, okay? So here we go. This revolt, or whatever you want to call it, against Justin Trudeau happens over the weekend when he's out of town. And now, I don't know what that number is. Is it 20? Is it 30 people in the caucus? Not sure. But at the same time as that's happening, and tell me what you think of the move, the Prime Minister goes out and gets himself a new campaign manager. So what do you make of all that?
Well, it's interesting. It's a national campaign director and a deputy. He's got two. So the two people have been put in the spots. Now, it's interesting because they're currently in jobs. So one of them is his deputy chief of staff, and the other one is, which is more interesting, is the chief of staff of Chrystia Freeland. Now, this is a very well-respected person. Andrew Bevan came from, and a lot of this is Queen's Park to the rescue yet again with people surrounding Justin Trudeau. And that's been a source of considerable criticism over many, many years, that there's just too much Queen's Park going on around Justin Trudeau, because unlike in other provinces, in particular here, the Ontario Liberal Party and the LPCO, the Ontario wing of the federal Liberals, they can be interchangeable, and they have they had in the past identical ridings. It was the same map. It was everything. It's unusual to take a staffer and put them in an organizational position. Usually organizers are the ones who win the elections, and then the staffers get the jobs afterwards, but we'll see how this works. It didn't work great under Paul Martin, but hey, why not? But
okay, on a bigger scale, though, is this Justin Trudeau kind of rubbing it in their face, saying, while you're planning my demise, I'm hiring someone because I'm not going anywhere?
Well, I think that's it. I haven't really thought he was going anywhere. I know him quite well. I did do his leadership campaign in Quebec, and I don't see him quitting in the face of Pierre Poilievre. I'm not here for a partisan commentary, obviously, but just being able to observe this from all these years. I mean, looking at Poilievre, and you saw him today. I mean, if you'll play the interview later, he was considerably calmer for his Quebec audience. So, I think, you'll see the pugilist and the Prime Minister come out, and I think we're seeing this it's all the things we've talked about minus Quebec healthcare. They're all kind of related.
So your best guess, you don't think he's walking, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, I thank you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.